Without thinking, we prevent all negative programming and judgments from tarnishing the initial thought of what we want to create. Without thinking, we prevent. Keep that in mind. Without thinking, we prevent. If I asked you, what are some ways you could make the amount of money you want to? And if you sat there long enough, you'll experience the same phenomenon of having random thoughts pop into your head of ways you could make that happen. These are thoughts of creation. Thoughts have the qualities of being infinite and expansive and feel energetically aligned with you. You'll know you have thoughts from the divine when you feel positive emotions, lighter and alive. As soon as you begin thinking about those thoughts, of the ways you can make the money you want, you'll immediately feel heavy, restricted, and limited along with a whole onslaught of negative emotions. This is how you'll know if you're thinking. Take those shoes off. Don't need them. I use my feelings as an internal radar that tells me whether I'm getting direct downloads of thoughts from the universe or if I'm in my head thinking about my thoughts. Universe, right here, this light, this beam of light right here. You can only ever feel what you're thinking. So feelings and emotions are like an intuitive internal dashboard that tells me if I'm overthinking. If I have many negative emotions, I know I'm thinking too much. This is another example of how we're naturally built for success. On the next page is a chart that compares thinking versus thoughts to help you identify which one is which within your mind. It's helpful to go through a few examples of thoughts in your mind and use the chart to identify if an actual thought is happening or if it's thinking, right? So there is a thoughts versus thinking chart, right? It goes like an attribute, a thought, and thinking. Like, so source, thought, universe, thinking, ego. Attribute, charge, thought, neutral, thinking, negative. Weight is the attribute. Thought is light, thinking is heavy. Energy, the thought is expansive, thinking is restrictive. See how it goes on? All right, chapter 5. If we can only feel what we're thinking, don't we need to think positively? Yes, we do. We surely do. We are ever only one thought away from peace, love, and joy, which come from a state of no thought. Dickon Bettinger said that. There is a caveat I haven't mentioned yet to the principle that we can only feel what we're thinking. The more accurate way of describing it is that we only ever feel negative emotions when we are thinking. The goal isn't necessarily to completely stop feeling negative emotions. Some negative emotions can be helpful, such as feeling fearful when walking down a dark alley alone when no one else is in sight. I hear you. I hear you. These negative emotions are only helpful for survival, but if we don't constantly encounter life or death situations, negative emotions are more unhelpful than helpful for most of us. We're going to be moving forward with the context that we're not struggling for physical survival, so we'll be using the context that negative emotions are not necessary most of the time. When I mentioned that we can only ever feel what we're thinking, most people assume we must think positively to feel positive emotions. Instead of convincing you that this is true, let's do another thought experiment so you can experience the truth for yourself. Recall a time when you felt the most joy and love you've ever felt in your entire life, and feel the feelings you felt as much as you can for at least 30 seconds. What thoughts were going through your mind at the peak moment when you felt the most joy and the most love? I'm not asking what you were doing at the time, but what thoughts were going through your head at that exact moment. Many people who answer this realize they had no thoughts during the exact moment. For others, they say that the thought was that they were so grateful or happy. For those who answered that they had the thought that they were grateful, did you feel that joy and love before you had the thought or after? Take 10 to 15 seconds to answer the question before moving on. What insights and epiphanies did you have? What's surprising is that most people didn't have any or many thoughts going through their mind when they felt the happiest and the most amount of love in their lives. Those who had the thought that they were grateful felt that way before they had the thought. If they had that thought, it happened after they felt the feeling, so the thought could not have produced the emotion. This brings us to another truth. You do not have to have thoughts or think to feel positive emotions. The beautiful part about truth is that it needs no justification because it can be experienced right here and right now. It doesn't need to be proven or rationalized to you, and you experience this truth firsthand by the experiment we just did. Here's why we don't need to have thoughts or to think to feel positive emotions like joy and love. Our natural state of being is joy, love, ecstasy, freedom, gratitude. This may be hard to believe because if it's natural, why don't we always feel that way? I'll answer that in a bit. If we want to see the natural state of anything, one of the best ways is to look at nature in its state, in its infancy, before it is affected and conditioned by its environment. For example, let's look at the natural state of a baby. What is a baby's natural and default state, assuming the baby wasn't abused, neglected, or had any physical issues? Are babies naturally stressed, anxious, fearful, and self-conscious? Or are they naturally in a state of bliss, happiness, and love? Our natural state of being is joy, love, and peace. Therefore, any thinking we do will only take us away from those natural states of being, which is why whenever we feel highly stressed, we have a lot of thinking going on. Yep. The strength of the negative emotion we feel is directly proportional to how much thinking we are doing in that moment. On the other hand, the intensity of the positive emotion we feel is inversely proportional to the amount of thinking we are doing at the moment. In other words, the less thinking we have going on, the stronger the positive emotion we feel in the present. Perfection, right there, perfection. To see the truth in this, recall a few memories when you were highly stressed and anxious and see how much thinking was going on during them. Take a few minutes to do such a thing. Then, recall a few memories where you were at your happiest or felt the most joy and the most love and see how much thinking you had going on at the time. Probably not a lot. My mentor taught me an analogy that helped crystallize this concept. Imagine our mind as a speedometer, like in a car, but instead of miles per hour, it's thoughts per minute. The more thinking we have going on, the higher thought-o-meter goes. And if we have enough thinking going on, it'll go into the red zone. This is when we feel incredibly stressed, burned out, frustrated, and angry. It is not the content of our thinking that causes us stress, but we are thinking, period. The amount of thinking we have going on is directly correlated to the magnitude of stress and negative emotions we are experiencing at any given moment. When you're experiencing a lot of frustration, stress, anxiety, or negative emotions, know that it is because you're thinking. The intensity of those emotions is directly correlated to how much thinking is currently going on. Therefore, it's not what we're thinking about that is causing us suffering, but that we are actually thinking. To summarize, we do not have to try to think positively to experience love, joy, bliss, and any positive emotions we want because it is our natural state to feel those emotions. The only times we don't naturally feel these emotions is when we begin to think about the thoughts that we're having, thus blocking the direct connection to infinite intelligence, and we feel stressed, anxious, depressed, and fearful. It is not about the content of our thinking, but that we are thinking, which is the root cause of our suffering. The intensity of the negative emotions is directly correlated to the amount of thinking we have going on in the present. The less thinking we have, the more space we create for positive emotions to naturally surface. You all ready for chapter 6? Yes!